Hello and good evening. It's now 19:05 in London and I'm Nikki Scott.
Hello, and I'm Luke Addison. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you'll agree that we had a great session with Jenny Seagrove. Her talk, Finding Sanctuary in the Natural World, Treating Others with Mutual Respect, really opened our eyes to the importance of our connection with nature and with animals, and also how we should treat each other. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. As always, if you missed our last Together Talks with Jenny, you can catch up on demand, along with a total of over 20 events available on the Rotary Great Britain and Ireland YouTube channel. The whole aim of Together Talks is to provide a resource library for anyone to use at any time for a virtual meeting, to invite Rotarians and guests into discussion and to inspire action.
And tonight, we are delighted to be able to introduce you to John Blakey, whose life's work has been to research and practice how trust and challenge contribute to building high-performance teams and organizational cultures. As an entrepreneur, corporate leader, CEO, executive coach, author, and thought leader, John has worked at the highest levels in both business and sport to support and challenge brave leaders who create purpose-led organizations based on a belief in the power of trust instead of trusting in power.
Thanks, Nikki. So John's topic tonight is 9 leadership habits that inspire results, relationships, and reputation. So without further ado, let's learn a little more about John through his introductory video.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Dr. John Blakey. I'm really looking forward to engaging the Rotary community and network as part of your Together Talk series. And I was asked to put together a short 1-minute video just to introduce you to me. So not the job title, not my work, but really just getting to know me a little bit. So I'm sat here in my man cave. This is my home that I've had for the last 12 months in lockdown. And it's packed full of memorabilia and nonsense and stuff that I've collected over the years. So I've just grabbed 3 items from this man cave to share with you, to give you a little bit of insight into me, John Blakey. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a football, but it's not just any old football. This is a football signed by all the players of the Birmingham City Football Club team in 2011. And 2011 is the year that Birmingham City won the League Cup, beating Arsenal 2-1. And that actually was 10 years ago last Sunday. So this is a very timely reminder of what was a fantastic, fantastic occasion for someone like me who has been a lifelong Birmingham City supporter. So football, one of the loves of my life. And the second thing I'm going to show you is another love of my life, which is music. So music, I find, has been with me all my life, and in particular the last 12 months I've really reconnected with music and how uplifting it can be, particularly in difficult times. And this is my favorite band of all time. This is a 12-inch signal by a band called Joy Division, and this is quite a rare record. I paid an unseemly sum for it on eBay some years ago, and it's called An Ideal for Living, and it was one of the first records produced by Joy Division, a sort of seminal 80s indie band, and I just loved the music and the words of Joy Division's work. So that's my second love that I wanted to share with you. And by now you're probably thinking, wow, this guy's a right hooligan, you know, he's into football and music. But I want to share the third love of my life, which I think will give you just a different perspective on me. And the third love of my life is I've got this statue, this small wooden carving in my office, and it is a carving of Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus. And we've gone from football to music to faith. And, you know, it is a big part of my life, big love of my life is my faith and my Christian path that I am walking, and you know, that gives me great joy, great strength, but also it's quite difficult as well, but it's a big part of who I am. And hope that's given you a little bit of a flavour of me, John Blakey, and we'll be engaging you shortly on the topic of the 9 habits of trust and the trusted executive. And I look forward to getting to know you all better through that session. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, John. That's a great start, kick off to the conversation. I think those statistics are very compelling. And I think a lot of our audience today, a lot of whom are Rotarians, although not all entirely Rotarians, will be interested into how that translates into the third sector and the volunteer sector. Because clearly that's the environment that we all work in the Rotary world. And I think before we get into exactly unpacking what the 9 habits are, I'd like to just start by talking about homing in on the relationships aspect of what we're going to talk about today, because it was through Rotary actually that I had an introduction to you and met you through that introduction through our Vistage connections, which ended up to be another connection in the life path. And funnily enough, I'm convinced that having re-met you here, we'd actually met over in the States formerly in our Vistage roles as CEO coaches. So I think that relationship aspect is fantastic. And I am thrilled that now our shared passion for this subject of relying on trust is enabling me to join your team. And I'm looking very much forward to working with you. Clearly, there's a lot we have in common and a lot we share in terms of that beliefs. And I love the going back to the music element, An Ideal for Living from Joy Division. What a great title. Mm-hmm. Can you just start by telling us how this life's work became your ideal for living, if you would?
Yeah, well, thanks for picking up on that. Yeah, an ideal for living, trust as an ideal for living. So my story with trust goes back 20 years. So 20 years ago, I was 37 and I was just been appointed to my last corporate role, which was International Managing Director in an organization called Logica. Logica was a 40,000 person global software company. And I'd been in that new job 2 weeks and I was walking down the corridor of power on the 9th floor of Stevenson House in London, just near Euston Station. And walking towards me that morning was my boss, the group CEO, who shall remain nameless for the purpose of this little anecdote. But trust me, my CEO was not the sort of person you particularly wanted to bump into in the corridor on a Monday morning. But I knew that this was going to happen. And CEO walked towards me. Let's call him Phil. Phil walked towards me and he said, how's it going, Blakey? And I said, it's going good, Phil. Yesterday, we'd sold the biggest deal we'd ever sold in the sector, £32 million outsourcing deal with Lotus Cars. And he said to me, you think that's good, do you? And I thought, oh, here we go. And I don't know whether it was bravery or naivety. I'd only been in the job for 2 weeks, so maybe it was naivety. I decided to stand my ground. And I said, yeah, Phil, I think it's great. And at that point, a finger came out and went straight in my face. And I heard this voice booming in my ears. You know your problem, Blakey. And I thought, no, but I'm clearly about to be unveiled of a lifetime's ignorance in that department. You're too effing nice. And he walked off. And I'm stood there in a 21st century corridor of power, FTSE 100 company, being told that my biggest problem is I'm too effing nice. And that was the moment, Nikki, that I realized I had a choice to make in leadership. Did I want to collude with this world that wasn't too effing nice, that was something else than too effing nice? Or did I want to make a stand for trust? And, that was the moment when in my heart, something said, I have to make a choice. And, the choice that I wanted to make, and I wanted to sort of go on almost like an experiment to say, okay, I'm going to choose this trust. I'm going to try and do it as best I can. I know I'm going to get it wrong at times, but I want to see whether this is a way of leadership, because the alternative that was being presented to me, I didn't really want to subscribe to that vision of leadership. So it was really an act of defiance initially. But since then it's become much more considered, much more rational. But initially it was really an act of defiance.
Well, that's a great story. And I can see how that would sort of set you on a path to prove that wrong to the world. And clearly that's been what you've been doing ever since. Right, Luke, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John. So a really, really interesting story, and I can relate a lot, especially being a young person and having worked in the kind of corporate world and tried to kind of find my feet, working in the kind of humanitarian world as well. I've often found people saying to me, it's a dog eat dog world out there. You can't be too nice. You can't, and I often found myself thinking, but almost naively, as you said, but why? So yeah, it resonates a lot. We talk about the 9 habits. Can we just ask you to delve a little bit into those 9 and talk a little bit about each one and where they came from?
Yeah, sure. And maybe I'd start with where they came from. This isn't a model that I dreamt up over a glass of red wine. This is the product of 6 years research, doctoral research at Aston Business School. So, I've done the hard yards with this work because what I wanted to create was something that people could trust, that, had substance. And so what I'm sharing with you has that academic verification, which for me is very important. In terms of the 9 habits, as I said earlier, 3 habits of ability, 3 habits of integrity, 3 habits of benevolence. And if I run through them, and what I'm going to do as I run through them is I'm just going to compare and contrast the habit of power with the habit of trust.
Perfect.
So the first 3 habits of ability are deliver, coach, be consistent. So to earn trust, you need to deliver on time, to budget, to quality. And I think that is a habit that was important in the world of power, and it's still important in the world of trust. The second habit is coach. In the world of power, we told people what to do, and it was our authority that commanded respect. In the world of trust, people don't want to be told what to do. They want to be listened to. They want to be empowered. They want their sort of ideas drawn out of them, their brilliance drawn out of them. And that's what we call coaching. And so coaching is the second habit in the model. Third habit is be consistent. I worked for leaders in my career who prided themselves on doing something different or saying something different on a Wednesday to what they did on a Tuesday or a Monday. And the theory was it kept you on your toes. And it did. And it sort of worked where fear was the glue of life. But nothing destroys trust as quickly as unpredictability of behavior. And that's why consistency is the third habit in this model. 3 habits of integrity: be honest, be open, be humble. Now, be honest, I think in the world of power, we knew that we had that aspiration to be honest, but there was also exaggeration, spin, gamesmanship. If you can bend the rules and get away with it, then why wouldn't you? I think in the world of trust, we have to accept that the bar on honesty is now ruthlessly high. In a transparent world with social media, we're under scrutiny as leaders 24/7, and we need to be demonstrating that honesty 24/7. Be open, this 5th habit. Be open is actually one of the habits that I'm working on, because as a white alpha male, I was not brought up to show vulnerability. It doesn't come natural to me. I didn't have many role models in that department. But what I know from the theory is that showing some vulnerability as a leader is critical to triggering trust. Because when I show vulnerability, I show that I'm on the same level as you, that I also make mistakes, that I get things wrong. And there's a humanness, a human to human connection that comes from that openness. 6th habit, be humble. The opposite of be humble is be arrogant. In the industrial age, the world of power, you could get away with being arrogant as long as you were successful. In fact, maybe we even expected it. But in the world of trust, however successful you are, we still expect you to meet us on a level. We still expect that human dignity of mutual respect to apply. And if you can be successful and humble, that's a great formula for trust. It was Jim Collins actually who said, level 5 leaders have this paradoxical combination of intense professional will and extreme personal humility. And that's that habit of delivery combined with the personal humility. Final 3 habits: evangelize, be brave, be kind, habits of benevolence. Evangelize is a religious word, but effectively at its root, it means spread the good news. And what we need in business are leaders who can have that inspiring vision. They know how to articulate that, to bring others with them. They bounce back from disappointments quickly. That's what great evangelists do, and that's how they inspire others to follow and pursue their vision. Be brave. This isn't the physical bravery of the power world, it's the moral bravery of the trust world. The slightly quaint idea that at some point in the cycle, the leader self-sacrifices on behalf of the wider whole. It's difficult, it doesn't happen often, but it's an incredible catalyst for trust. And finally, this last habit, be kind. What has kindness got to do with leadership? I don't remember being on the senior management course for kindness on my MBA program. But it turns out that kindness is one of the 9 habits of trust, and trust is the one thing that changes everything. So the great news about habit number 9 is permission to be kind, folks. Kindness is part of leadership. What a great job to have if, as a leader, that you can make someone's day every day. And that's that habit of kindness, and it can really change the emotional complexion of any situation. So that's the 9 habits, Luke. I've probably taken a little bit longer than you expected. No. I get it. I get a little bit into it once I get going.
No, it's fantastic. It's brilliant. And my only question would be, have you had to adapt or change any of the habits now that we've kind of moved into this kind of virtual life on Zoom? Or do you find that these 9 habits you've set lend themselves quite nicely to the lifestyle we've got now? How are you finding implementing them at the moment?
Yeah, the last 12 months has been a fascinating time for us all, hasn't it? And I think the thing with the virtual world, the new world of work, is that trust has to be explicit and intentional in this virtual world. When we're in the office sat together, then trust is implicit, and we've all learned, the sort of rules of the office-based world, and therefore it sort of comes with the territory. As soon as we're on Zoom, we're all, consciously incompetent when it comes to building trust. But what that means is that we more than ever need models like this to help us get intentional, to help us get practiced about specific habits. So I don't think the habits change in this environment, but what has changed is the need to start afresh from zero in how do we build trust in this virtual world. And I for one, think it's perfectly possible to achieve it, but we have to be prepared to put ourselves back in the classroom and learn new tactics for how we bring these habits to life in the Zoom and Teams environment. Yeah,
brilliant. Thanks.
Let me home in on that same topic, actually, because I think that's a great question, Luke. Let's focus in on benevolence specifically, John, which is very core to the trusted executive model. Do you think that this environment of everyone sort of going into hibernation and separation enhances the need for benevolence? Have you seen more of that, or do you think it stresses it more?
I think what's happened as we've seen each other in our homes, and we've sort of been stripped of that, sort of corporate and work-based identity. We've all sort of seen each other with our children, with our dogs, with our mugs of tea, with our footballs and our bits of music. And I think that's helped everybody realize that we are all first and foremost, human beings trying to model through it all. And it's sort of stripped us back a bit. And I think when you get stripped back, that benevolence factor very strongly reappears into the equation, because people wake up in the morning and they go, why am I doing this? Just remind me, why am I doing this? When all the stuff, the trappings of it get stripped away, people are left with that question. So why today am I doing this? And one of the things that helps people answer that question is that they're working with people who care, people who show care and compassion, whether that's around the mission that they're pursuing, or whether it's just in the daily habits and behaviors, the way they treat each other. So I think the stripping back of this lockdown experience has reminded us all of the power of benevolence. And one thing I really hope is that as we come out of this, we don't quickly forget that we actually take it with us as one of the silver linings out of this, very dark experience.
I think that's great. I think, throughout my career, I've always found it hard for people who felt the need to separate personal and professional, because at the end of the day, we're one person, and this window into each other's lives creates more empathy, which is at the root of that benevolence. So I think these are fantastic habits to the theory. You've obviously put a lot of time into the research, John, and in your book, which I really enjoyed reading, you quote Einstein, and I think this is great. In theory and practice are the same. In practice, they are not. Talk to us a little bit about that. So you've told us the theory. Talk to us a little bit more about the practice, if you would.
Yeah, you know, at heart, I'm a practical businessman. You know, I have studied a lot in my career, and I do believe in the power of that theory, but I really want to see it applied. And as you know, Nikki, the Trusted Executive Foundation is a not-for-profit that I founded in order to put the theory into practice. You know, our mission is to create a new standard of leadership defined by trustworthiness. And so we are now on that journey of converting the theory into practice. And we're working with some very brave, pioneering leaders who are saying, yes, I get it. I want to be one of them. And I also realize that I have some work to do. I mean, one of the outcomes of the research was that on average, CEOs rate themselves 29% more trustworthy than the people that work for them. So this is what I call the authenticity gap. You know, we're not as good as this as we think we are. And that's why it requires bravery to face up to that and say, okay, I'm willing to do the work. And if leaders want to go on that journey, then what we can do is we can bring diagnostic tools to the table. So we now have an organizational survey based on the 9 habits to allow a culture to be measured in terms of what habits are strong, what habits are weaker. We have a 360 feedback tool that we can use in a coaching environment with an individual leader, again, to give them a diagnostic around the model. And we have a Journey of Trust program that allows a team of leaders to go through a 6 to 9 month experience, really immersing themselves in these habits with the support of individual and team coaching. And it's through that coaching that I think we've got a realistic chance of unpicking the wiring of the habits of power and reconnecting that wiring with the habits of trust. This is quite deep behavioral change, but I think coaching as a vehicle of organizational, you know, intervention is very powerful in helping leaders make that shift.
Sure. So following on from that, John, quite nicely, you talk about this journey, this leader's journey, the leaders that are on. And I think eventually there comes a point for anyone who wants to be a leader, who is currently a leader, where that journey must come to an end, where they have to accept that their role as a leader must now be passed on. And so every good leader must understand that the whole point of leadership is to develop and encourage new leadership. So I guess my question is, you know, what work do you do directly with these people that you're leading to kind of encourage them to eventually hand over the baton, if anything? But also, what advice would you give to kind of leaders at the moment who maybe would be reluctant to step down?
Yeah, I sometimes talk, Luke, about the trust tribe. And I think using the language of tribes is quite interesting when we talk about these different roles that people play in the tribe. I mean, because in the tribes, the elders of the tribe have a particular role to play, but the warriors of the tribe have a equally important but distinct role to play. And I think one of the biggest challenges for anybody who's been a warrior in the tribe is, at what point do you realize that you are no longer the best warrior and it's time to become the best elder in the tribe? And, you know, I think that's the challenge that we face as a generation of leaders, really, is that, you know, there's probably a generation of leaders that have really enjoyed being warriors, you know, in the tribe, and they've got their medals and they enjoyed it, and it was all great fun. But where do we go from here? And I think the vision I want to create for anybody who's in that sort of transition is to say, it isn't a case of retiring from the tribe and having no role to play. It's a case of seeing the vision of what does it mean to be an elder in the tribe? what are the skills of an elder? What is the role of an elder? And I think once you can see that as a distinct and valuable role, it's much easier then to create the space for those who, with the best will in the world, are going to be the best warriors in the tribe. You know, and then part of the elder's role, obviously, is to create the environment in which those warriors thrive, to mentor those warriors, to be a pool of wisdom, and also I think some of the moral guardianship of that environment is also part of the elder's role. And I just think that that's a role that collectively we need to cherish more and showcase and put value in order that people don't cling onto the baton too long before it's passed on.
Yeah, brilliant.
John, I'd like to take that opportunity to move into Rotary world. And in fact, I think, you know, any non-profit sector organization to some extent, although Rotary is quite unique. I don't know if you know this, but we change leadership across the entire organization every year, which is like, whoa, that's a challenge. So we're constantly focusing on continuity and looking to nurture future leaders and build that consistency, if you like. So talk to us. Catherine Richards actually asked a specific question, which I think would be great. How can leadership be effectively developed within Rotary, given it is that sort of model?
Yeah, I think Rotary, and as an example of you know, a voluntary organization, a third sector organization, and you know, I've worked in some voluntary organizations and supported some voluntary organizations, and in some ways I think you have a head start because you've never been able to rely on power in the way that a lot of corporate organizations or business organizations have done. So in a way, I'd say you're probably ahead of the game in as much that you've had to develop the habits of trust in order to get to the point that you are in. And I think, you know, now for organizations like Rotary, it's a time to accelerate that which you've always had to do. I think it's an opportunity to say, you know, we now need to go to the next level with using trust, but we are actually a great starting point. And if we really seize the moment, you know, we could actually become role models for how this looks in the new world, because the shackles that are the institutional shackles that are around PLC businesses, you know, make it a little bit harder for them to do this. So I think we are looking for best practice. We are looking for organizations that role model this, and I think the third sector is an arena that's very ripe for this type of work, and we're working at the moment with a number of third sector organizations because we find that they get it quicker. They certainly get the theory quicker. The practice, I think, is still as difficult because there's still the same conditioning that we've all got to unlearn. But it helps if you can at least, you know, grasp the concept very quickly and have the motivation to want to work with it, so that you can commit to some of the challenges that are definitely down that path.
I like that reference to best practice because I think there's a lot that the third sector can learn from the business sector and vice versa, right? From that point of view. Let's home in on assuming that trust exists, you know, and the practice has been practiced. Is it fair to say that's quite a delicate balance to always strike? And what happens then, John, if trust is broken, whether in third sector or business? Talk to us about how do we repair trust when it's broken? Yeah,
well, there is a chapter in the book called What to Do When Things Go Wrong. And it's there for a reason, because we all will get it wrong. And another quote on trust is, you know, trust arrives on foot, it leaves on horseback. So when it goes wrong quickly, and it goes wrong often very badly. And people are then left with the question, yeah, how do I put it right? Now, one of the uses, I think, of this model is that if you break trust on a particular habit, then I think the first thing you do is look at the other habits to say, which habit can now help me? So let's take an example of that. Let's say I blemish my copybook in terms of delivery. So I get it wrong. I don't deliver, you know, something goes wrong in terms of what I committed to deliver. So then I look around the model and I see the habits of be honest and be open. And I think, okay, if I got it wrong, maybe I need to be honest about that. And I need to be open and apologize for what I've done wrong. And equally, I look around the model and I see the habit of being kind. And as we all know, when things go wrong, an act of kindness can be a great gift in terms of repairing a situation where trust has been broken. So I think, that would be my advice really, is inviting people to use the model to recognize that trust isn't just the one homogeneous thing. It's 9 habits. And therefore, when you break trust, it's always one of the habits that's had a crack in it. And then the good thing is you've got 8 other habits that you can look at and say, which one of these could actually help me recover trust? And that isn't to say it happens instantly, or it's some sort of magic formula. It still takes often takes time, and I think there is a patience factor inevitably in rebuilding trust. But I hope that gives people hope that trust can be lost and it can be regained.
Super. So just we're nearly out of time, which is always the case. We get into a really brilliant part of the conversation and we're stuck for time. But leading more into a kind of personal level, John, how often do you find yourself implementing these habits in your personal life outside of your work life?
Yeah, great question. And I think this model of trust applies to every relationship, doesn't it? So why wouldn't it apply to our personal lives? And for me, I've had a 360 assessment on the model, using the model. I was only testing the tool at the time, but unfortunately, I got some feedback, which meant that I know the 2 habits that I need to work on, and personal as well as professionally, is be kind and be open. The openness habit, I think I've mentioned already. That's something I'm working on. And the kindness habit, the joke I make about kindness is, I'm a Yorkshireman. My dad spent 40 years in the bank and my wife's an accountant. So, kindness is not in the DNA. But I'm realizing very late in life that it is an incredible power tool of leadership, kindness. And I'm quite enjoying having discovered it and sort of you're plugging it in and seeing what it can do. But I'm certainly not. There are many people who are much better than that. Than me, and I noticed that in my personal life particularly, and I'm appreciating that in others much more than I ever did. So I now sort of really look up to people who have this kindness habit, whereas maybe in the past I didn't fully get it. I didn't fully understand, exactly what that was all about. It sounds a bit weird to say that, but I honestly didn't quite get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a really tough one. I think certainly be kind right now with the amount of stress everyone's been under with this pandemic. It would be a beautiful thing if the world could focus in as a whole on being kind and being a little bit more forgiving of the stress levels there and the mental health aspects, right?
Can I just throw something quickly in on that? I was asked the other day, do I think we're getting kinder as a society? And I said, and I hadn't thought about the question at all, but I found myself saying, no, I don't think we're getting kinder, but I think we're becoming more aware of how unkind we actually are.
Yeah.
I think there is an awareness now of cruelty and where it shows up that didn't exist, 10 years ago. And that's got to be a good thing. But, the next step is, well, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Well, awareness is a good start, right?
Yeah.
Talking about awareness, I think self-awareness is such a great aspect of a leader. And Ken Robertshaw has actually asked a question, John. Would you agree that born leaders are a myth and that all leadership is learned?
I would agree with that. In my book, I talk about the fixed mindset and the growth mindset and the work that's been done around how that attitude can influence people's development and learning. And I'm very much a growth mindset believer that as a coach, I've seen people develop and do amazing things that they couldn't, have imagined doing. And that gives me a lot of confidence in, the potential for change in people. And that's why I talk here about habits, because we all know people who've changed habits. We know people who've stopped smoking, people who've run marathons, people who have, you know, stopped habits and created new habits. And we know they needed a lot of motivation to do that, but we know they did it. And so I think habits is an empowering word to use. You know, we're not talking here about fixed character traits. First, you make your habits, then your habits make you. And I think that's a way of thinking about this, that your character is an accumulation of your habits. So if you can change your habits, you'll change your character.
Yeah, really good point. So another question from me, John. I like asking this one, especially to people who you know, are themselves brilliant leaders. But I love asking, you know, who inspires you? You know, where do you take your kind of inspiration for leadership from? You know, you obviously are looked up to by a great number of people, but you obviously must look up to a lot of people yourself. Who are some people that you really look up to and have taken these kind of messages from?
Yeah, so now you're inviting me to be open, Luke, and practice this habit of openness. 5 years ago, I'd have probably talked about a business person or a sports person, but I'm going to say that Jesus is the person that I look up to from a point of view of leadership. That's me being open. In business world, you know, do you talk about your faith? I don't know, but I mean, it's part of who I am, and I'm hugely inspired as a leader by the example that Jesus set. You know, so I do find that this work, even though it's scientifically based, aligns with a lot of the great wisdom traditions in spirituality. So, you know, maybe it's no coincidence that these truths emerge in different ways, and you know, that would definitely be my inspiration.
Yeah,
lovely wrap up to the purpose-driven sense of where we're going in life, right? And tying that to the work. If we can line our personal purpose to our work as well, that's a lovely thing. Goes back to your way of life, your album, Ideal Living.
The ideal for living, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think we're out of time, aren't we, Luke?
Yeah, I think that's just about it, unfortunately.
So to the next step then, John, we're going to ask you for your 3 key takeaways, if you would, for everyone to act on.
Yes, you did, and you did say I was going to have these 3 takeaways, so I can't say I wasn't prepared. So 3 key takeaways. First key takeaway would be trust matters. You know, those statistics that I shared, I could share many more. Trust is a magic wand. It can make a huge difference. The second key takeaway would be, you're not as good at this as you think you are. If 29%, you know, that 29% authenticity gap, if you are a leader, you're probably not as good at this as you think you are. And therefore, to me, that's a bit of a wake-up call to say, if it's that important, isn't it really appropriate to find out, you know, how you're doing on this? And the third takeaway would be, you know, the model. That I hope that models help by creating a language, creating bite-sized, manageable chunks for practical people. And if it's based on science, then, you know, great. You know, hope that people can rely on that. So those would be the 3 key takeaways. It matters. You're not as good at it as you think you are, but here's a model that hopefully could really help.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, John, and thanks for your time. Really fantastic, and we hope to see you again soon, and obviously keep in touch.
Thanks, Luke.
Thanks so much, John. Take care.
Super. Well, honestly, a really fascinating perspective on leadership. I'm sure we can all take a lot away from that. John clearly knows what he's talking about when it comes to inspiring others to be influential leaders. But I also thought his thoughts on when to hand over leadership and make way for new future leaders is definitely a perspective that we can learn from and implement within, inside and outside of Rotary. I think there's a lot there that we can all take away today. So next time on Together Talks, we are very delighted to welcome the incoming Rotary International President, Shekhar. He was a member of the Rotary Club of Calcutta, Mahananga, West Bengal in India. Shekhar is aiming to challenge current membership trends, and he believes that membership development should be Rotary's highest priority. He believes that focusing on regional plans, successfully transitioning Rotaractors into Rotary clubs, and increasing diversity and female members could yield a 5% net growth in membership each year. So we'll learn more about his theme for the upcoming year, which I'm sure you'll know is Serve change lives. And it's a talk that's not to be missed. So please join us next time to hear the incoming Rotary International President talking to myself and Nikki.
Thank you. On this subject of authentic leadership, Shekhar definitely is a man that walks the talk, so he's very inspiring from that respect. And let us end by thanking our audience, as always, for being with us tonight and the questions that we get. We would like to remind you that tonight's broadcast, along with all of the other series 1, 2, and now 3, are available on demand on our Rotary Great Britain and Ireland YouTube page, where we would like you to invite you to like, subscribe, and share. So until season 4 now, which starts on April 27th, it's good night from me.
And a very good night from me.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.